So you think the Gaza thing is in that vein? No, I think the Gaza ownership thing is more nefarious. The Gaza ownership conversation is just also classic Trump, which is saying the quiet part out loud. Democrats would never make the mistake of openly stating that they have a desire to do mass ethnic displacement. They would relegate that to the backroom dealings. They would talk about it behind the scenes, try to urge Egypt to open up the floodgates and move Palestinians into the Sinai Peninsula. That was the reason why I said in my 2024 predictions that that was what was going to happen. And lo and behold, yes, they did actually actively try to do that, urge Egypt and other states like Jordan to make preparations to do mass ethnic displacement of Palestinians. Just so you know, before all of the liberals that freak out and say, oh, well, Trump is doing this, like, what now? Yeah, this is something that apparently the Biden administration also quietly pushed for as well. The difference between Trump and Biden, on the other hand, is that Trump says the quiet part out loud. He takes the maximalist position openly. Whether it will actually happen is an entirely separate conversation. I mean, this is something that even Benjamin Netanyahu, unironically, actively praised. Benjamin Netanyahu actively praised this when he said, Donald Trump is so good because he says things others are too afraid to say. This is also something that, make no mistake, this is a logical extension of the past 16 months under the Biden administration where there was so much death and destruction. When Donald Trump says, oh, Gaza is filled to the brim with rubble, we have to clear it out and rebuild, who actually destroyed Gaza? Israel did. Who actually allowed Israel to destroy Gaza? Biden did. That didn't happen as a natural disaster. So just remember that. When I say there is no indication, for example, that the previous administration or even Kamala Harris would be that much different, even though, yes, history has shown that while foreign policy is uniparty, the only difference is that the Trump administration or Republicans will oftentimes extend and take it even further right, and then the Democrats refuse to fix it. This is what I mean. The diplomat said, here it is, Egypt rejected similar proposals from the Biden administration and European countries early in the war, which was sparked by Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack into southern Israel. The earlier proposals were broached privately while Trump announced his plan at a White House press conference alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's interesting hearing from people that European leaders, for example, that actively defended the Biden administration, that actively defended Israel's death and destruction in Gaza, only now to turn around and say, oh, Trump is saying the final solution. He's advocating for ethnic cleansing. That's unacceptable. We cannot do mass displacement. That is a violation of international humanitarian laws. It's like, yeah, so 16 months of unlimited genocide wasn't a violation? It's only a violation now that Trump is saying it? That's it. That's the major difference. Democrats try to manufacture consent surrounding the issues that they advocate for. Even if they fail, they still try to do it. And they try to do destabilization in a more covert fashion. Republicans, especially nowadays, do not care about being covert. They will do it openly. They will celebrate the brutality.
Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani is due to meet with U.S. Middle East envoys.
What exactly is your point, though? The Democrats are not in power. Biden is not the president. He was not even running by the time the election happened. So, like, what is your point? I get it. It was bad, but you're doing, like, nothing to help anything. Wait, what? No, this is simply addressing something that's very important that people have to contend with. Because a lot of liberals think that this is not a uniparty process, especially foreign policy. And they think like, oh, what now, pro-Palestine protesters? Like, you did this. This is what you wanted. You're getting what you wanted. When most of the pro-Palestinian advocacy came from the understandable fears they had towards a Trump administration, moving the needle even further in terms of genocide, death, and destruction, and therefore urging the Biden administration and the Kamala Harris campaign to take a strong stance against Israel to stop the bleeding. So at this stage, if you're looking at lesser evil harm reduction arguments around what's more harmful, mass ethnic displacement campaign, forcibly moving Palestinians out of their ancestral lands, or what's worse, death and destruction in a mass bombing campaign that destroys all structures that are standing in Gaza, That is an insane conversation to be having. We've already completely lost the plot. If that is the boundaries, that's the moral conundrum that we have in front of us, that is what we're arguing on behalf of.
Steve Witkoff in Florida later on Thursday. The meeting comes ahead of the next exchange of Israeli captives for Palestinian prisoners as part of the Gaza ceasefire deal, which is expected on Saturday. Let's take this on with Rami Khoury, who's a distinguished public policy fellow at the American University of Beirut. Joins us now from Boston in the United States, in fact. So, Rami, first up, what's your sense of this conversation that's going to be had between the Qatari Prime Minister and Steve Witkoff? It would be interesting to be a fly on the wall in the light of what President Trump has been saying.
Oh, absolutely. It's a critical relationship. Qatar has proved to be, with Egypt, essential to get the process moving to the point where we are now, starting the second phase of the negotiations, which would ultimately get the Israelis out of Gaza, all hostages and prisoners released, and the end of the war. So the problem is that the Qatari position is clear, the Egyptian position is clear, the Hamas position is quite clear, but the Israeli position and the American position are like a kaleidoscope. They keep moving around and new ideas are presented. There are huge internal debates within Israel that keep throwing obstacles into the way of the process. Netanyahu's legal fate is on the line. He has to go to court. He may go to jail. So there are lots of moving parts that are not clear what the implications are. And the latest is, of course, Trump's proposal to get the Palestinians out of Gaza, which already is being walked back by his senior officials, his foreign minister, his Middle East envoy, his press secretary. They're all kind of walking back, saying, "Oh, this is temporary." Not by him, because he doesn't really have a clear idea of what he's talking about. He's a showman. He does drama, he does disruption, and he does disillusion. And he's really a delusion. He's really done all of these in this proposal. Most people tend to feel that what he's trying to do is put out there an outrageous proposition that he knows is not feasible, but he wants it to soften the Saudi position on normalization with Israel. This is the big prize that the U.S. under Biden and now under Trump, that they've always looked for. They want to get Saudi Arabia and Israel to have normal diplomatic relations, feeling that this would open the door to all the other Arab countries following suit. And the Saudis have actually taken a harder line position after the Trump proposal.
They have these 300H LiPo batteries you can chain twice. I have industrial grade battery generators.
So these are incredibly important discussions. They're going to focus narrowly on the discussions in Florida today, are going to focus on the negotiations to release the hostages and the Palestinian prisoners.
And are you on that? Are you, and the ceasefire in general, are you fearful now, given what's being said by the president about the efficacy, the solidity of the ceasefire deal as a whole?
No, I don't put a lot of emphasis on what Trump says. He says all kinds of things. He changes his mind. He clarifies. He denies. So he's not a reliable source, as the news business people say, though he is president of the United States. So what he says has to be considered seriously. But it should not be taken as a clear path towards a policy. It has other motives, some business, some personal, some family relationships, some investment opportunities, and then cajoling people on both sides, pressuring people. So it's a fascinating study and sort of kaleidoscopic diplomacy. You know, a kaleidoscope, when you turn it, all the pieces move and then a new situation comes about. So I think that we have to let the process play itself out, focus on the negotiations, the second phase that's supposed to start. Everybody, and I mean everybody, wants the Israeli hostages released and the Palestinian prisoners released, and the ceasefire to be permanent, and the Israelis to get out of Gaza.
Okay, well, the exchange is due again for this weekend, isn't it? You could argue, perhaps, finally, Rami, you could argue perhaps that in a way he's made the world more aware of what Israel has done in Gaza.
Oh, absolutely, including American officials going to visit. And I'm hoping the global media will be able to go soon, even though many of them, including Jazeera and others, have Gazan journalists who are sending out reports. So yes, and this is what the Israelis desperately want to stop. They want to stop two things. They want to stop the world seeing what Israel does militarily and, with prisoners and all the terrible things it does. And that's why it's so widely discussed now in terms of both apartheid and genocide. And it wants to stop any discussion of the historical background to the situation in Gaza, the Palestine Zionism conflict, the Arab-Israeli conflict. It wants desperately to prevent any historical analysis. And it's increasingly unsuccessful in doing that because more and more people are going to the Middle East, they see now the West Bank, what's going on. Therefore, the trend for the Israelis is not good. They've lost their ability to completely dominate the narrative of the Arab-Israeli conflict and the Palestinian people in the West, in the media, and in officialdom. So it's quite extraordinary. I'm reading now the amazing book by Ilan Pappé, the Israeli historian, on the history of Zionist lobbying in the West, in England and the US. It's a 450-page monster, but it is the most amazing analysis based on total historical factual truths about how Israel has succeeded in doing what it's done, which is create a Jewish majority state in a Palestinian land that in 1920 was 93% Arab, including my family in Nazareth. So this is what they're trying to prevent, the Israelis, any discussion of this, and they're slowly losing control of this narrative.
All right, Rami, thanks for that. Rami Khouri speaking to us there from the United States, from Boston.